especially my family back there, presenters and co-contributors and everyone. Thank you for coming to share this special time on our last day in graduation. As many of you know, or anyone that has ever stepped foot on this property, I'm sure you're aware of the sacred nature and the spiritual connection that you feel just from stepping on the property here. So when we were presented the idea of this project, I had no idea where to go. I love plants, and I've been gardening for a while. I know all that stuff, but for some reason I just could not pinpoint, like, okay, what would I redo or how would I redo this layout? That wasn't hitting it for me. And as we were going along, everyone kept asking, what are you doing your project on? What are you doing your project on? And I'm like, I don't know. I need to see everything first, see how it feels. So with the topic being Earth Care, People Care, Fair Share, that just kept resonating in my head. I'm like, I know it has to do something with that, of course, because that's the ultimate goal. So one day, leaving class at night, we usually would walk out as a group. There's one particular night I'm walking by myself, and I'm like, wow, it's pretty dark out here. And my phone was about to die, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to make it to the car before my phone dies because I'm using my flashlight. And then all I can remember is Dr. Melvina told us there's a fox out here, and I do not want to this fox keep coming. So I like to think about. So I'm like, lights. Why are there no lights out here? So one day on one of our excursions, I just asked, I'm like, is there a reason why there's no lights on the property? Because with all the permaculture beliefs and the way we do things, you want to work in concert with nature and not against it. So I'm like, well, maybe, of course, who am I to question the expert? I'm like, there's got to be a reason. So I inquired. The only reason was budget. And I'm like, okay, so let me look into it. Like, what do plants need at night? What do the wildlife need at night? What is the reason why light would either be a necessity or would take away from the area? Because I'm like, all right, budget is one thing, but what are the other elements that come into that? So what I challenged myself to answer was, how important is lighting to a permaculture space, and can we incorporate lighting at IWC without taking away from the spiritual and regenerative nature of the sacred land? So that was my challenge to myself. That's the important part. That was my challenge to myself, okay? But when we had to do our one-on-ones, I was presented with another challenge. I was presented with specific questions to answer. Because yes, when we were given this project, it was more so, the 7 layers of permaculture, your canopy layers, and that was kind of what I think everyone was focused on, but I just wasn't drawn to that part for some reason. The 4 questions that I was asked, though, was what, why, how does it contribute to permaculture, and does it work in terms with collaboration and cooperation? Now, at this time, when I presented the project, I was thinking like solar panels or some sort of like solar lighting. You know how you can get the ones that you put in your yard to line your pathways and that kind of thing. And I'm like, that's an idea. But then when I kind of looked at the ones and I observed the ones that I have on my own property, I'm like, they still illuminate a lot. And I noticed in those areas, not many of the wildlife wander around. And at home, yeah, that might be a problem. But in nature, we want to kind of nurture that. So I didn't want to disrupt what was already there. So I'm like, okay. So I started to do some research on people that had homesteads and how they incorporated lighting into their already existing setups and things. And one question that someone asked, they said, let's imagine people wanted to encourage nocturnal life in their garden, but they also wanted to do lighting. And I'm like, yes, this is the article to read because this is my exact question. This is what I want to know. So I'm reading through all the rules, and you want to do this, you don't want to do that. And I'm like, okay, that's a lot. Is this really the project I want to do? But one of the questions stood out to me, and it's simple. It was, don't put lights where you don't need them. And I'm like, all right, so do we need the lights? And I'm like, it'd be nice to find my way to my car safely, but do we need that? Because I can use my cell phone, I can use a flashlight, we can hold hands and smile at each other as we walk to our cars. You know what I mean? Like, do we really need these lights? So I looked up, actually no, this was given to me again because I didn't look up a lot of this. A lot of this stuff came to me. I would just get on my computer and the answers to my questions would just come. So I noticed something called ecological light pollution. And I'm like, okay, so what are the effects, like what effects do the lights at night have on the animals, like I had just asked before? And so I noticed that it has musculoskeletal and eating habits, it'll affect their eating habits and their growth. So I'm like, okay, we definitely don't want to do that because that's working against nature. Okay. That's noticed in most of the, your small nocturnal animals, the animals that wander around at night. So, my experiment was, okay, so if the lights are an issue and we don't necessarily need lights, what if we could illuminate the area without adding lights? And I'm like, all right, so let's go down this rabbit hole and see where this goes. So I was, wandering around some of our excursions and just kind of thinking, and I'm like, all right, what if there was some kind of way I could paint something, or I could put something that would glow or something in the area? So I observed the space during the day and at night, and I decided that I wanted to paint a rock, but then it had to mean more than that. I'm like, okay, just a painted rock. It's a painted rock. And where would I put them and all that kind of stuff? So what I decided was I would not only plant rocks, but plant a moon garden first. And so as I observed the area, I noticed not much of the walkway that we walk by when we leave. There's not much sun in the area. So I'm thinking, okay, if we do solar panels, they wouldn't get lights. They wouldn't get the charge from the sun. If we do just the rocks, like how would that work? So I'm thinking a moon garden needs the moon. So we get moonlight there. So I was like, okay, so, but you don't want to just plant anything. And this is an already established area. It already has all the 7 layers. It already has this. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to come in and plant stuff. How would I actually do that? So I observed the area, and there are certain little pockets right along the walkway where you could plant some small, more like herb layered plants that could add to the space, and with just minimal pruning, I don't really want to say pruning, but just minimal pruning and just a little bit of maneuvering things, these particular plants could be added into the areas to help illuminate the nights. So the 2 plants that I want to focus on, because there's 4 that I found that would grow well in this area. There's white evening primrose, there's the moonflower, white yarrow, and wild bergamot. Now, I chose those 4 because 3 of them are perennial to this area and medicinal. One of them, although not perennial, will self-seed. So it's minimal effort to take care of the plants. And them having medicinal uses, which we'll get to, all adds to that. So the first one I'll look at is the white primrose, which I have a picture of right here. It does well in partial shade. And notice how I mentioned that there's already trees and the canopy layer already in that area. So I needed something that would grow in a shaded area. And so the white evening primrose, it will grow well in the shaded area. It's evergreen, night blooming. Oh yes, and the bees love it. That's the part I was ready. I put tomatoes there. And the bees love the plant, so we obviously know we want to help support the bees, the beehives that are here, and any other bees that will come in because they help pollinate your garden. So the second one that I chose is the moonflower, which Jeray can testify to because she actually had an experience with the moonflower. They have iridescent blooms. They're pollinated by night-flying insects. The one reason why I definitely would want to incorporate this particular plant is because they attract the hawk moth. And there are tomatoes that are right along the driveway, and hornworms attack tomatoes, but these hawk moths will attack them. So it's kind of like unison. So they would work together. Go. The hawk moths also tend to move pollen farther than most bees or birds, so that would help with the pollination. So now I'll actually want to show you guys something that I thought was pretty cool. I found a video that shows the time lapse of a moonflower blooming throughout the night, so you can kind of get an idea of how it looks.
Mark, make sure you give me a thumbs up that you hear the sound. Can you see the screen? Mark?
Yeah.
Can you see the video screen?
I can see the screen, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh. We don't necessarily need the sound that we're using. That's the sound.
They were like totally into it. They're upset it got stopped.
That just gives you an idea. Plus, it just adds some interest, to a garden space that you might already have. It's just kind of, I thought it was a cool idea to have a plant that was kind of interactive. You know what I mean? It would help illuminate the space, and then you could just kind of get to enjoy its beauty in that way. Now, to go back to the rock idea I had, because I kept getting this kept drawn to the rocks. I kept being drawn to the rocks, I'll say. Like, I was really happy with the moon garden idea, and I'm like, yes, that's cool. But I really felt compelled to still do something else. So I did some more research, and I discovered what's called a cairn, C-A-I-R-N-S. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, cairns. They are intentionally constructed piles of stones, and the indigenous people use them for ceremonial purposes. They are also called wawasenex. I can never say this word. They have another term. It's like wawasenex or something. But cairns is
Karen's is one familiar.
they're generally not solitary, but occur in groupings ranging from numbers of singular piles to multiple piles. And the piles themselves are usually multiple rocks as well. That's usually how you find them. Not only would these stones, this stone display light up the path, but I just thought it would be nice for every PDC to also collectively contribute a stone to this walkway every year, because something else that you mentioned that kind of touched me is that you'd like every cohort to bond and also become one with the earth. And so I'm thinking as displaying one of the stones that we would, paint together. It could even have like a symbol of one of like the gods or goddesses of the light or something like that. And we would paint it and just kind of present it to the display together. And then not only would that bond us as well, but it's kind of like an illumination and almost like a spiritual path and walk that you would take as you enter and exit the area. You know what I'm saying? So, and I also have a sample, and I'll pass this around so that you guys can see it. But I have a picture of how the stones would look at night, and then how they would look during the day. And I have the paint that you guys can see if you want to pass it around. It's an environmentally friendly paint that you would use, because of course that was important. You didn't want something that would, of course, have like a adverse reaction to the
Don't eat it.
thing.
So sorry, whatever.
And again, the plants that I chose are medicinal. Most, like all but one, are perennial, and even the one that's not perennial, which is the moonflower, would self-seed and come back. So there's minimal work that would need to be done to take care of it. So earlier I mentioned there was 4 questions that were presented to me, and we answered the what and the why. Well, we've answered the what, we've touched on the why, but there's also 2 other questions. How does it contribute to permaculture, and does it work with collaboration and cooperation? Now, I gave you one of the whys. The original why was just pretty much, okay, we're walking out, it's dark, we want to see how to get to our car. But there was a situation that sold my idea on doing this project. One, obviously, like I said, the walking out to your car. But on, I call it the birthday intruder. I call it the birthday intruder. And some of you might even think I'm nuts after this story, but all day on your birthday, Melvina, I was trying to reach out to say happy birthday, and things kept happening all day. It's like, okay, usually because when you say happy birthday to someone, you say it at the beginning of the day, right? Usually to start off the day. For some reason, I could not until like 9:30 p.m., around 9, somewhere around there. The moment I was just like, oh, before I forget, I'm so sorry it took so long, happy birthday. And your reply to me was you just had an unwanted visitor, and it just happened. And so I go to your Facebook page, because you said you posted it, and I'm like, I don't see anything. You're like, no, it just happened. I just posted it. But long story short, there was someone wandering around, walking up the driveway, and hence another dark area. And so I was like, yes, this is like the perfect idea, because I believe in, signs and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's definitely, I think, something needed. So that was the other why. That was the why. Now, how does it contribute to permaculture? Well, first, in order to answer that question, you have to know what is permaculture. So I looked up the definition of permaculture, and it's the development of agricultural ecosystems intended to be sustainable and self-sufficient. And I definitely think this plays into that part, because you have the plants that are native. They help deter pests. They help attract good pollinators that we need in the garden. not only that, but a moon garden is almost like a meditative area because it's like an experience because you can sit there just like you saw in the video of the flower blooming. It just gives you a moment to just kind of sit still and observe nature. So I just thought that would be like a cool way to kind of start off your day here. You know what I mean? Or as you're leaving your car, or leaving to go to your car, just to kind of walk you off on your path. And that's pretty much it. This is the picture of the plant during the daytime and at night, and I'll show you guys.
I can't wait to talk about that later.
Oh, I forgot to go over one more thing. Earth Care, People Care, Fair Share. So Earth Care, non-toxic paint, native plants, and the at-risk support. I forgot to mention that the moonflower also helps the at-risk plants in the area from their pollination and all that kind of stuff. The People Care, the graduation ritual of adding the stones. That's like a bonding moment that we could all share. And cohorts to come. The medicinal plants, I mean, that's kind of self-explanatory. They're used for medicine to help take care of ourselves. The illuminated walkway, that's definitely people care because we can see and hopefully not be harassed by intruders. And fair share, by leaving the plants to reseed, you're also leaving plants there for the pollinators to, and you know, the bees to continue to have throughout the season so that they're not out there hungry. So, any questions?
Oh, this is so cool.
Any questions? Another outstanding presentation. Mark, do you have any questions of Jamie or comments?
Wow. It's not, I guess maybe a bit of a question, but I'm just amazed at how much y'all have made this your own, you know, like how different each one of these projects is. And yeah, it's interesting. I almost feel like y'all can consult on each other's projects or something because you each have kind of like these different focuses. But yeah, this one in particular just has me all up in my feelings. Spirit and yeah, just making
I haven't had
places like, God, just the conceptual framework about thinking, you know, most people think about permaculture during the day, not necessarily at night. And I think that there's a lot of other flowers. I guess that's the question. Like, basically, most of the white flowers tend to bloom at night. And they also tend to be really aromatic to attract their pollinators. So that's something else to kind of like incorporate is like maybe an aromatherapy type of experience that goes along with it. But yeah, just amazing presentation. A lot of food for thought.
Thank you. And it's funny you say that because I actually deleted a slide that did kind of talk about one of the setting areas near the pond that I was going to create kind of like a little romantic setting area. Because when you think of permaculture, you also think of not really having to leave your property. So I'm thinking, all right, you have your food and you have your medicine, but you also just want like an oasis or like a little escape on your own property. So how cool would it be to be able to just kind of wander out at night, spur of the moment, without having your phone, without having a flashlight, and just kind of wander over there and just sit and enjoy the aroma, the lights and all that kind of stuff, and meditate. You know, so.
That would be very cool to answer your question.
Very nice. Let's give her another big hand. Wow. I just keep saying wow. Okay. So, do we just have one more?